Hello and welcome to the Learning Lounge, iHasco's monthly podcast series where we delve into a variety of subjects as we look to uncover opinions, expertise and experiences with our studio guests. Today we're looking into the world of scriptwriting and exploring what sparks creativity in individuals. We'll be chatting to our guests about how the scriptwriting process looks, where they take inspiration from, their style of writing, artificial intelligence and more. I'm your host, Chris Miller, and I'm joined by two incredible guests today, James Kelly and Charlotte Dibley. Hi, guys. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Great to have you with us. Just let's introduce you to our viewers, to our listeners. Let's just hear a little bit about your background with scriptwriting and the roles that you do now.
So I've been at iHasco since June 2023, so still relatively new. So at the moment, I'm a junior scriptwriter.
Okay.
So at the moment, I'm kind of learning the ropes, but I'm kind of getting involved in writing scripts.
But still
helping
long
to-
in the tooth when it comes to writing, right?
Exactly.
I mean, what's
Yeah.
your background with
Yeah.
scriptwriting?
So my last job I was at for 7 years, which is quite a long time.
Mhm.
So I was a writer there as well. So I wrote video scripts in terms of walkthroughs, system walkthroughs, how-to guides as well. And that was with a variety of clients as well. So it's been a long time that I've
Great,
been doing it for.
great stuff. And James?
So I'm a senior scriptwriter at iHasco. I've been here for about 7 years. So my background doesn't really involve much writing. For a long time, when I was at school, I was terrible at writing. If you told me I'd have been a writer as an adult, I would have laughed at you. I could always think and write creatively and think outside the box, but I couldn't put my thoughts down in a nice, coherent and rational, logical way that would express myself to other people. I always struggled with that. Until I went to university and I studied philosophy, one of those subjects that are often referred to as being quite pointless. But for me, it was very pointful. That's a word. And because it helped me think logically, it helped me kind of put my thoughts down in a rational, structured kind of way so that I could express myself very clearly. And so it was around university that I thought, oh, maybe I can write. Maybe I can do something with this. And so I left university and put my writing skills into action by stacking shelves at a supermarket for a couple of years. But then I worked in a library shortly after that for a couple of years, where I did lots of writing for the kind of website and uploading things there. And then, as I think is the case with a lot of writers and creative roles, iHasco took a chance on me, and I ended up here. And 7 years later, here I am.
Fantastic stuff. And it sounds like sort of the chaos in your brain when you were younger was sort of helped by going to university, studying philosophy, although maybe doesn't seem like a direct correlation, but actually sort of helped you organize those thoughts, help you give you processes, tools, and ways to sort of get what was in your head down onto paper. Is that kind of a fair thing to say?
The chaos is still there. I'm able to find shapes among the chaos and kind of bring those out, tease those out.
And Charlotte, what about for yourself? I think, you're a bit of a bookworm. Is that fair to say?
Very much so. So I'm slightly different to James in that I was incredibly English based when I was a kid. So I loved reading and writing. English was my favorite topic at school, very academic. So that was where I naturally leaned into anyway. I did American studies at university, so similar lines in terms of not really necessarily leading to anything, but I think it did give a good basis in terms of writing different topics. So that was helpful.
Helpful. I imagine lots of dissertations, lots of long essays in both of those subjects, right?
Lots,
So
yeah.
you can't really escape the writing process when you're doing philosophy or American studies at university.
Absolutely not.
No.
Right. Well, I managed to avoid a lot of that when I went to university because I was doing film and drama, so that was all good.
Nice.
So let's just dive into the process for you guys. Tell me a little bit about the script writing process when it comes, to every day with your jobs. You're obviously given topics. You have a blank page ahead of you. Where do we begin? Charlotte, what about yourself?
So for me, obviously we kind of get a brief first. So that's an idea in terms of the title of the topic and the kind of things that we maybe need to be including, deadline and things like that. For me, the blank page is a little bit scary, but I always start with research. So that's the thing that I can then build off. So I always spend time researching, because I think the more that I understand the topic, the more that I then get creative ideas in terms of, I don't know, analogies that I can then add into the script. So for me, the first thing I do is open up a blank document and put in any relevant links, any relevant quotes, sort of put everything together in one place. That's all of my research.
Kind of a little bit of a brain dump of things. So is there any particular order to all of that, or is it just sort of get everything down in there?
For me, it's pure chaos.
Okay, got you.
Yeah, so I just throw everything into a document so it's all there. And
then you can come back to that and start to organise that chaos a little bit later on and start to sort of see where segments or topics start to sort of correlate. And James, for you, blank page, terrifying as well?
Absolutely, it's the most terrifying part of the job. But no, just to build on what Charlotte said, we do lots of different courses. You know, I think I worked out the other day, in the 7 years that I've been there, I've done 70 plus courses roughly. So we're doing different, multiple different courses a year, and we've got to kind of be experts on that subject matter every time we write. You've got to know what you're talking about. You've got to be confident you know what you're talking about. You've got to make sure you hit all the main talking points. Pass on what other people need to know so that they can do their job safely, effectively, efficiently. So the first week or so of any topic is drowning yourself in research. It's having 500 tabs open. It's having books open. It's having paper with scribbled notes all over them. It's the chaos of the mind on paper and on the screen. And then slowly you can chisel away and you start to get some kind of a shape. In terms of process, really that first week is just chaos, with notes and scribbles and diagrams sometimes and pictures and things. But then it slowly starts to come into view. And then what I like to do, I don't know if Charlotte works in the same way, but what I like to do is then I build the kind of skeleton. So I have section 1, slide 2, slide 3, and I just have that skeleton. And I write in kind of note form, this is what I'm going to cover roughly in this slide, this will be in this slide, so on. And maybe a rough kind of word count per slide. And then it's a paint by numbers after that. Again, methodical. I try and go through from start to finish. Probably not the best approach all the time, because that opening kind of welcome slide is sometimes the trickiest, because that's got to be quite a big opener. So sometimes it might make more sense to kind of work through afterwards. But I tend to work quite methodically after that and paint by numbers. Okay.
I mean, you said you've been with iHasco for 7 years. How many courses do you think you've done? Just off the top of your head.
About 70 plus.
70 plus, right. Okay. So, I mean, it's almost like I can maybe equate it to like an actor playing a role, a method actor even, right? You hear about these guys who and girls who go in and do, they adopt a role, they learn everything that a doctor might say or everything that a priest might say, and then after the courses are done or after the role is done, they it's gone kind of thing. But in that moment, in that sort of period of time where they're sort of performing and rehearsing everything, they are an expert in that field. Is there something in that sort of sense of immersing yourself in the role, in the subject, in the topic, so that you can be an expert for that month or however long it is that you're writing?
I'd never quite thought about it in that way, but actually, it is quite method. I am becoming a GDPR expert for, a number of years, actually, that happened. I still get people asking me about the GDPR. But it is that. You are becoming an expert in that thing for a short period of time. Obviously, I've got no qualifications in these things necessarily. But you become an expert temporarily.
Yeah, kind of absorb from different sources. You kind of have to.
You're going home at the end of the day and you're teaching, your partner how to use a fire extinguisher or something like that. Don't get up that ladder. You're going up the wrong way.
Exactly. The amount of times I've bored my wife to tears with just, various topics that I'm discussing. But she works in HR, so it actually comes in handy sometimes. She's probably some of our HR-based courses.
Loves it when you're doing a great HR course.
Exactly.
I mean, God, get some free content here. That's fantastic. So tell me a little bit about maybe one particular course that maybe sticks out for you, a process, let's just say one that actually was sort of the template, the kind of ideal process that you can think of, and maybe a subject that you really enjoyed writing about or learning about and immersing yourself in. Charlotte, with you, like obviously it's been a year working with iHasco. Any particular that sort of stand out as like, that's the kind of way I like to write scripts?
So I think for me, it is the process in terms of starting the researching process, having a blank document, building on that. I think a big thing for me whenever I do any script writing is collaboration, which I think is a big thing, because it can be quite lonely to some extent, I think, when you're writing. So often it's through the research I'll then start to get ideas of things, and then really importantly it's having a meeting with James, and we have regular weekly meetings, weekly catch-ups, and it's during those catch-ups that I can essentially spitball, bounce ideas, and basically check that ideas are viable. And this is the process that we do for every single script that I write. So I find that really helpful, because then I can see whether the road that I'm going down is workable, essentially.
Is the right one,
Yeah.
absolutely. James, just off the top of your head, any particular, topics or scripts that stood out for you?
Well, every script is or every style of script is very different. We do lots of different things. We obviously do soft skills, we do HR, we do health and safety, and each one has a completely different approach, a completely different feel to it. For probably the first year or so of me being at iHasco, most of my courses were quite health and safety, legal kind of things, which can seem quite dry. But what I quite like about that is finding a way to make it interesting. I had a teacher at school. Slight anecdote coming up. I'll warn you about that.
Anecdote warning.
I had a teacher at school who would often do very weird things at the beginning of a lesson. You would walk in and just have a box on his head, or he would be speaking like a robot for the first half of the lesson. Just weird things like that. And he explained once that when he was at school, there was a vicar that came in to give an assembly. This is all relevant. It's all relevant. Don't worry. I had a vicar that came in to give an assembly, and he walked out on stage, and everyone was just kind of talking, being rowdy and everything. And he had a daffodil, and he walked out onto stage, stood center of stage, ate the daffodil. Everyone quietened down. What the hell's this guy doing? And then he gave his assembly, and everyone listened, because like, what's this crazy guy doing? And the kind of moral of that is, if you grab people's attention right at the beginning with something really interesting, it hooks them in, and they're more likely to kind of pay attention throughout. So the welcome slides, that kind of opening slide to our courses, is something that I really try and that's the bit I like to sink my teeth into. I like to try and find some abstract thing that I can link to what we're doing. I wrote a course on goal setting one time, a soft skill course on about how to set goals. And I started by talking about the Voyager probes that have been flung out into kind of deep recesses of space. It's a strange kind of out of the box link, but I like finding those kind of links to kind of grab people's attention. How is this relevant? Now I'm going to pay attention. I think that's important.
It's great. I mean, obviously in this day and age where attention spans are seemingly getting shorter and shorter, I mean, it's those first 2 seconds when you're looking on social media, but when it comes to courses, it's that first opening 30 seconds to a minute. How are you going to grab my attention? I've certainly, obviously, from reading your scripts myself, always noticed that style of you. You'd always have those interesting facts, that historical story, that kind of something that would just grab you, and always really liked it. And it kind of leads me on nicely to this next topic I want to talk about, which is about script writing inspiration. And obviously you just mentioned this. Was it a vicar, did you say, who came out?
It was my teacher, but he was talking about a vicar.
Oh, talking about, okay, great. But a great, what an incredible sort of tool or mechanism that they used and has inspired you in your script writing process. Charlotte, is there something that stands out for you as inspirational when it came to how you've developed your script writing process and what you do on a day-to-day basis?
I think for me, it's generally informed by the research. That's a big deal for me. I think also life experience. I think that's a big part of it. So any scriptwriter is bringing their own kind of life experience, their own kind of lens to some extent. So I think that's part of it as well.
And that's okay, right? I mean, if anybody listening who is, writing scripts and thinking, oh, can I put my own experiences, my own personality kind of into this? Actually, it's an important aspect of it. And it probably helps that develop that creativity and spark sort of what can then be a really good writing process.
Yeah, because I think, like James said, it's grabbing the attention of somebody. So you're trying to find something that engages them, whether that's a creative topic or a creative way of doing something, essentially. And if your personality is within that. I think it's quite important because I'm sure we've all sat through training videos and things where you don't feel that there's any kind of engagement or personality there that you can really connect with. So I think anything that you can do to put a little bit of twist on it.
Yeah, and I think it's a good sort of bit of advice as well, is that no matter how maybe specific your own experience might feel, people listening or watching, when it comes to these kind of things, will find a way to make it relevant to themselves, right? So it doesn't matter that you've given a very specific maybe story or some sort of thing that's happened to you with certain relationships. What they'll take about from it is the themes or the way that you acted, or what they can glean from that as advice on how to do it in their own lives. So people go and do that work themselves, and what you do is you put onto the page something interesting and engaging for them, just to, like James was saying, to bring their attention in and to hook them in. I think one of the things I'm sure lots of writers out there, or anybody who's trying to do writing, can feel is writer's block, whether that's at the blank page stage, which it sounds like with your guys' research and the way that you do that process, that's okay because you have your way of sort of ignoring the blank page to start with. But, what if there's a point where you get into the middle and there's just that sort of, as they say, writer's block? Where do you go with that, James? What would you say to that?
It can be a very frustrating experience. There have been times where you just feel like you've got nothing accomplished. I've sat there for a full day, 2 days, just writing, deleting the same sentence over and over and again. It's daunting. It's scary. I think probably the best way is to move on. Exactly what I said that I don't do, is move on to another bit, write that, and usually that kind of unblocks that kind of that blockage, and you can kind of start writing something. It's just kind of getting writing. Once you've got the mechanics and the momentum of writing, it tends to start coming back. But yeah, it's quite a daunting time. I mean, research definitely helps, kind of reading around a bit. I like to try and find the kind of threads of a topic, and then follow those kind of laterally to something related but not exactly the same, and that can sometimes just give you, and then you do some research in that area, and that can sometimes just give you that push to get the momentum going again. So yeah, research, trying to find those threads.
Yeah, and would you I imagine, agreed, Charlotte?
Yeah, so I think for me, I think I've had writer's block on every single thing I've ever written, to be honest.
Yeah, that's good to know that it's very, very normal.
Very normal, very common. I think for me, it is acknowledging when I do need to step away, because I think I know for a fact sitting and staring at something, staring at a blank page, struggling with a concept isn't particularly helpful to do. So for me, it's knowing when to, okay, I need a break, I'm going to go and put some washing on, go and have a read, sort of taking myself away from that. And I think, like James said, if there's a particular section that I'm struggling with, move on to a different section. I don't know about you, but I generally get inspiration in the shower for some reason. Nice. So I was going to say, that's where ideas tend to come.
Yeah,
for me.
Because I mean, you take the pressure away, right? If you're staring at the screen, you're staring at the blank page. The pressure is there, right? Your mental health is in that moment suffering because you're just putting this pressure onto you to type something good. Go for a walk, have a shower, you know, put the washing on, whatever it needs to be. That's got to be a great way to sort of just release that kind of pressure, and hopefully then creativity can flow. I mean, I suppose you can think of it like literally a clogged pipe in that way, right? And all you need to do is relieve the pressure and get rid of that blockage, and that can mean stepping away from the laptop for a period of time as well. You know, when you think about some of the topics that you guys do have to write scripts on, they can be seen as pretty dry from the outside, although having read them myself and hosted the courses, I know how interesting you guys have made them. GDPR sticks out as one that I always still remember to this day in terms of the various key elements that I need to take away from that. How do you approach something like that, which can seem very dry, can seem like, well, how am I going to make this interesting? You know, where do you go with that? James, I think you wrote the GDPR one, so let's start with you. Just
yes, I've written a number of GDPR courses. We had the GDPR courses. I think there were 3 we had when the GDPR first came out in 2016, I think it was, and then I rewrote them after Brexit, or in anticipation of Brexit, for kind of UK GDPR. So I've written them twice, and Again, it's trying to find something
Mhm.
just a bit interesting about it. So I think the first round that I did, I managed to get sailing ships involved in the welcome slide,
Mhm.
because I thought, okay, well, what is GDPR about? Essentially, it's about sharing data. What is sharing data? It's sending messages. It's sending letters. How long did it used to take to send letters? How frequently are messages sent today? How much data is being sent today? That's why it's so important. That's why we need the GDPR now. So I did that historic. Again, you have to inject a bit of your own personality, your own interest in there. So history, philosophy, those kind of things are very interesting to me, and me alone. So I injected some history in there. So I talked about the fact that it used to take, I think it was like 8 months or something. I can't remember the exact numbers. About 8 months to get a letter from Britain to Australia, and then they opened up the Suez Canal, and that shortened the trip down to 4 months. And then nowadays, you can ping to the other side of the globe in seconds, up to the International Space Station in seconds. So that's made GDPR necessary. So I kind of added in that kind of slightly interesting, in my mind, element to give the GDPR some meat on its bones.
Yeah, and you are giving context, to what can be a very overwhelming subject, right? And one that people may not even understand the importance to them, right? But if you simplify it and take it back and give it some historical context where there's interesting facts and things that they've not heard about before, but it's still, like you say, completely related to exactly the same sort of sharing of information, the sending back and forth of messages, etc. They can see that link, and suddenly they start to sort of understand what it's all about, basically.
Absolutely.
So Charlotte, tell me a little bit about your writing style, if you can, and how did it develop? Can you kind of see your own writing style, or is it something that people tell you about? And how does that sort of affect the way that you do your writing?
I think I can't really see my own writing style. Maybe you can, because you kind of edit a lot of my work. For me, it's actually been a process of unlearning some things, because I do have a very academic background. So writing academic essays, dissertations are very different to writing the kind of courses that we do here. So there has been actually a process of unlearning a lot of things, because it's very very academic, the way I'm used to writing.
I'm just thinking back to when I used to have to read sort of academic journal pieces and stuff at uni, and they were so verbose and so.
That's how you're
I was
taught
on the thesaurus or the dictionary every, 5 minutes basically, and going through at snail's pace. So glad that you're unlearning that for these. Not going to lie, but so so the style, you're sort of adapting your style then to essentially what we're doing here, and putting it into e-learning courses, which need to be accessible for everyone.
Yeah, and it's simple things like word swaps, even, which is something that I've been learning as well. So instead of saying sort of required, saying sort of needed instead, so it's a little bit simpler, simplifying things a little bit. So that's been an interesting unlearning process for me, I think.
I just wish that academics didn't write like that in the first place. I might have learned something more at uni, but that just shows that I probably wasn't really cut out for reading those kind of things.
But that's absolutely the point of why we write in that style.
Yeah, 100%.
To filter out the dum-dums.
Got you. I wasn't going to say it. But, no, it's because people can be turned away from learning things if it comes across as being too academic, if it comes across as being too highfalutin. People don't take it in. They think, oh, this is above me, or I'm just not going to, I can't pay attention to this. So iHasco is very much about making training simple, but also making it engaging and making it useful for people. And so we make it conversational. And so, like you, I mean, the first year or so of me being here, and even still today, I'm still doing it, is unlearning writing in an academic style and writing in a conversational style. So writing for Chris's voice when he's presenting.
So much easier to read as well when it is written like that.
And to be honest, when I write scripts, I tend to have your voice in mind.
Very true.
I write with your voice in mind.
Not this exact, my hosty voice. A little bit different, isn't it?
But so it's about kind of making it engaging, conversational.
Yes.
We're well educated peers is the kind of, we're knowledgeable peers. Explaining something to our colleagues is how it should be kind of approached.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much important information at the end of the day that you're putting into these courses, which is why people get certificates at the end of it, and these are big parts of businesses, and everything that they're doing to educate their employees. So there's an awful lot of important stuff that needs to be conveyed. But you really don't want people switching off mentally or physically, literally switching the videos off. They need to stay engaged. They need to take in all the information, but it has to be in a way that's like as if you're sitting across a cup of tea, maybe with someone in, and they're just sort of, and here's how this works, and here's a little diagram, and the salt, pepper shakers did this, and then that's how data gets, these kind of things, which I think is what you guys both do fantastically well with these courses, and all the team who put together all the sort of, the demonstrations, whether it's animation or on location demos as well. It's why it's such a great success as well. So no, fantastic. Tell me a little bit about AI. This is the big sort of, the topic of the moment. This past year has seen artificial intelligence really come to the fore in every possible niche of every possible industry, I feel. I think, when we look at it from a scriptwriting perspective, is it friend or foe? Like where are we at with it?
Well, I've been involved in a couple of projects to kind of experiment with using AI and seeing how it can help us. I think the way to think about it as a writer is that it's not there to replace you. As scary as that image may be, it's not there to replace you. It's there to assist you. It's there to make things easier, make things quicker. So the ways that I've found it particularly useful is in moving on from that blank page. When you've got that blank page in front of you, you just need that search for inspiration. You can pop a couple of prompts into AI, and it will kind of give you something, and that may just be enough to get the ideas flowing for you. It's also quite good at giving structure. You can ask it how you might structure a course on XYZ, and it will give you a structure. And then I'm still doing my own research, still populating that with my own writing, but just getting that structure in place or getting a clearer idea of how I might structure. It's been incredibly useful as a tool for that.
So it sort of works more as an assistant to the work that you're doing, right? Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. It's not a third writer for iHasco. It's simply a tool that helps us and makes our lives a little bit easier.
I don't think it can replace kind of human creativity, but I think it can aid that creativity, which I think is important. And it is, in the next few years, it is going to be sort of a bigger part of life. So I think kind of utilizing it in the right way.
And I've heard a sort of a comment about AI, which is not that it's either, AI takes the jobs or that people have, but rather the people who will be successful are those who can use AI to support what they're doing already in a way that sort of moves things forward, rather than just seeing it as something that, that's replacing me kind of thing.
I mean, it feels like the next big step. I mean, there were companies that didn't jump on the, for example, digital streaming bandwagon. There were the companies that didn't jump on, selling things on the internet and just stayed on the high street, and they didn't stay around for very long. AI feels like the next kind of technological leap, and if you're not utilizing it in some way, I think you're going to be left behind.
Fair. So it's a kind of the kind of thing which is it's a normal part of society evolving and industry evolving, and it's something that just needs to be notice it, learn about it, see how it can support what you're doing. I mean, is there a particular AI tool that you can recommend, one that you're using for the script writing you're doing, that our viewers and listeners can sort of take away from this?
Well, it's just ChatGPT that I use. I've experimented with a few others. There was one that it was designed specifically for training courses, but it wasn't very good.
Okay,
didn't really like that one. Can't remember the name of it. Only used it once or twice.
Just for everyone listening at the moment, how would that work then? ChatGPT, just talk them through sort of how you might sort of prompt it, as you said.
So I will. Well, sometimes I'll actually put, copy and paste in an example of my own writing and ask it to kind of write something in a similar style. That's never really gone too well. I've got such a unique style, of course. So what I'll usually do is I'll kind of prompt it with something like, write me 300 words on such and such a thing. It will then pump something back. It usually doesn't get 300 words. It usually misses that bit out for some reason. But then that becomes the kind of inspiration for what I'm writing, and I'll take from that. Now, the important thing to remember, of course, with ChatGPT is that it might not be accurate. So I never just kind of take what it says at face value. It's always a kind of style point or an artistic or creative point rather than anything that I'm actually going to take and kind of copy and paste. I'm yet to trust AI with information. So yeah, it is really just about getting kind of creative nudges and getting those kind of thoughts kind of flowing. It's not about taking information from it because I'm yet to trust it on its information. But as a you give it prompts and it gives you information that prompts you. That's where I find it most useful.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I do have one last question for you both, just to sort of summarize what we've been chatting about today. What do you believe, Charlotte, we'll start with you. What do you believe sets apart an exceptional training script from an average one?
I was going to jokingly say us.
Yeah, James or mine.
James? Yeah.
Average, exceptional.
Yeah,
Sorry, no,
exactly.
Obviously, no.
I'll say that.
For me, I think it is kind of that conversational thing. So it is kind of engaging with the audience. So I think that is, because as I said earlier, we've all sat through courses that maybe aren't great. So I think with iHasco, it's very audience centric. So I think it is kind of trying to engage them, but also giving them information in the best possible way. And it is kind of, how would you explain this concept to a friend, essentially? And then that's how you do it in the script.
Absolutely. And it sounds like tone is quite an important part of that, right? The way that you would speak to someone across, the table about something, tone and language really matter, don't they? And James, obviously, when it comes to tone and language, I mean, your scripts have always sort of stood out as something that I've really enjoyed reading myself. Like for you, how have you always seen and separated what would be an average script to an exceptional script?
For me, it's got to have, I mean, I've kind of already touched upon it, but it's got to have something engaging, whether that's an unusual kind of thought process that links into the subject matter, whether that's a really kind of striking fact or statistic, or whether it's just the kind of, as you say, the style, the tone, it's conversational, it's warm, it's friendly. It's that makes a difference. Average and not very good online training lectures at you. It's a professor kind of explaining something very difficult in very kind of difficult jargon-based terms.
Very academic.
Very academic. Exactly. It's exactly what we try not to do. And I think that's what really sets it apart. You're learning from a friend. You're not learning from, you're not being lectured at.
Yeah.
Fantastic stuff. And with that, I'd say that concludes this month's episode of The Learning Lounge by iHasco. Hopefully, we've been able to give you some creative inspiration when it comes to script writing. And of course, a special thanks to Charlotte and James for joining us and for sharing your insights into the world of script writing. Of course, your roles with iHasco as well. We obviously covered writer's block and that blank page, which I thought was really interesting about how you guys approach that. Research. Sounds like the sort of key takeaway there, go and brain dump as much as you can at the beginning of a topic and immerse yourself in that topic as well, much like a method actor might do. But also understanding that with writer's block, it's okay to step away. It's okay to move on to the next slide and to leave that one. But yeah, I think I like the stepping away and going for a walk or having a shower or doing the laundry kind of thing. I do like that one as a little bit of takeaway. But yeah, thank you both. And of course, thank you everyone for watching and listening. If you'd like to listen again or share this podcast, you can do so via the iHasco website or our YouTube channel, where you'll be able to watch and listen on demand. See you next time.